Hi everyone, we're back with our latest podcast. However, this is an episode with a twist. 2025 launches our third podcast series as we look to speak with more entrepreneurs, business leaders and sales professionals to obtain more insights for those in our Delta Learning Network. In today's episode 1 of our podcast series, I'm delighted to welcome someone we've worked with over the years, Peter Fleming. A consultant since 2008, he's been NFU Mutual's L&OD facilitator and consultant. With a talent at figuring out how lots of different people can work together productively, Peter's key strength is his ability to find the optimum connection between an individual's qualities and the resources that they have available. Committed to people development, Peter has a strong background in all aspects of business coaching and supports in areas such as performance management or conflict resolution and creating an empowered sales environment. As we kickstart our podcast series, I've invited Peter on for something a bit different. Today, he's taking the role of the interviewer and he's going to interview me. Hopefully, it's an insightful conversation. We start our series with something a little bit different and we hope you enjoy today's episode. Thank you. Welcome everyone to our first podcast of 2025. We've decided to switch things up this year. We're starting off with Peter Fleming, who's a good friend of mine and somebody I've worked on a number of projects with all the way back to 2017. And in this podcast, Peter's going to be turning the tables and interviewing me a little bit more. And we're just going to have a chat over the next 20 or 30 minutes. I hope you enjoy it. I wonder, Peter, if you could just introduce yourself first.
Thanks very much, Steve. My name is Peter, and I've been working for nearly 3 decades in the learning and development field. And over the last 15 to 16 years, I've been working with one of the UK's general insurance and financial services provider, one of the best, I'd like to add. And for the last number of years, I've been offering a business consultancy service to a network of agencies across the UK.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you here. And I'm sort of slightly nervous. I like to be in control of asking the questions, but it's your turn this time. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, Steve, I've given some thought to a few of the questions I'd like to ask and trying to keep it fairly flowing, hopefully, and not overly structured. So I'm not sure if that makes you even more nervous. But yeah, I think since we've met, firstly back in like 2017, I've always been really interested in the organizations that you've worked alongside. And I think that, you've worked with some amazing companies over that period of time with connections all over the globe, specifically in recent years as well. So a very open question, what have you learned over that period?
It is a very open question. What have I learned? I think one of the key things that I've learned, regardless of size of organization, regardless of geography of organization, or even what they do, they have some consistent challenges. And when I first engage with an organization, all of them will tell me how unique their organization is. And of course, there is an element of truth to that. There is uniqueness to every organization. But there are also these consistent themes that come out. And what I've learned is that if we can tap into those consistent themes, if we understand, where the challenges typically lie for those organizations, then we can help them to be even more successful than they are today. So I've learned that, look for those common themes that we can help organizations with. The other thing, or another thing that I've learned is it's as much about mindset as it is about whatever skill set or tool set the individuals have or teams have to be successful. And if you can get a positive mindset where people are focused on what it takes to be high performing, and if you can win the hearts and minds around that mindset piece, then the rest is relatively easy. And I think it's getting easier over the years in terms of the kind of tools that people have access to, things like AI coming along, giving us lots of access to information and knowledge that maybe we didn't have in the past, or it was a little inaccessible in the past. And if you've got the right positive mindset, you can go and find those things and improve yourself, and therefore, the team performs at a high level. So I'd say certainly those two things. Look for the common themes that are going to unlock performance in that organization, and focus on the mindset first.
Okay. So that's really interesting. I'll maybe come back to the common themes if that's okay. But what's probably attracted me is your answer around the mindset. Is something I think that we've both spoken about before, especially the links with even competitive sport. So we are literally just tipped into the month of February at this stage. So there would have been lots of planning probably last year across the variety of organizations you've worked with, lots of big ambitions. And potentially now the first month of the year has gone. So they're through January. And, what would you say to a business where they're looking at their figures, their sales figures, and actually that excitement that was around on New Year's Eve has maybe been burst slightly. So, they are not working against plan as they expected. So how would they really, I guess, pick that up in terms of maintaining focus and, encouraging their team? Because there's another, obviously, 11 months of performance required, plus potentially some catch up.
Yeah. I mean, different organizations have different financial years. So, some of them may work through to the end of March. Others may even have a July, August into their financial year. But let's take it that, many organizations, the end of their year is December. And, what I've observed happening is in that back end of the year, there's a real push and a pressure to close the year as positively as possible. And that is being done at the same time that you're trying to plan for the year ahead. So there is a challenge for people. How do you make sure you've got some good plans in place to hit the new year at high pace whilst trying to finish off the old year in the best possible way? And I think the reality of that is that quite often teams are coming into January, and there can be a temptation or a tendency to kind of breathe a sigh of relief that they achieved whatever level of achievement from the year, take a little break, and then the hard work really starts February onwards for the new year. And lots of organizations have kick-off sessions for their team to really re-motivate the team, because it doesn't matter how good you are, you do need that period of relief and a little bit of rest for you to be able to go again into the new year. So I think the organizations that do it well get that planning done as quickly as they can, as effectively as they can, and they also invest in their team because they know that a little bit of extra motivation is going to support them in what they need to achieve in the new year.
So what you're saying really from that perspective is recognize that lull potentially will be there at the start of their year, whether it's January, April, and plan for it. So that balance of having the motivation, potentially some incentivization, but also recognize that it will pick up. It's not done by the end of the month, so don't worry.
Yes. Yeah, your year isn't lost after the first month, as many people will know. And I know many people have probably quoted this, the Roger Federer speech that he did when he was talking about the percentage of games that he won through his career, which was 80% plus. And then the killer question was around, but how many points did I win? And it was down at the sort of low 50s. And his point was that he just had that little bit extra in those key moments, but the difference between being an 80% winner and someone who isn't 80% winner is very fine margins. And if you have lost a point, the key is to move on from it quickly. And I think that's good advice for us in our organizations, but particularly in sales. It doesn't always go your way. And the key is to move on from that as quickly as you possibly can. And remember, you're still in the game and there's still a chance to go on and, be very, very successful. So, regardless how 2024 went, regardless how the first month of 2025 has gone, you can still win, overall. And I just love that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, great learning for us all that, let's not get involved in the navel gazing or the blame game. I know we've spoken in the past about paralysis by analysis, maybe over examining everything. Why hasn't it went well? But there's another point to be scored, another opportunity just around the corner. So yeah, really like that. I want to jump back slightly to the common themes that you've noticed, but maybe tie a couple of things in. So you have already mentioned AI, which I think was about 4 minutes in your conversation. So that, I'm not sure if that sort of points out just how important it is in the world that we live in today. So perhaps you could maybe pick on one of the sort of common themes you've identified and how you see AI being involved, supporting that theme, or maybe adding to the challenge in the current marketplace.
Well, let's pick one to start with, which is around finding and winning new customers. If you're in a sales role, particularly new business sales role, then a large part of your success is going to be down to your ability to open up conversations with potential customers and then support them in any way you can. My feeling is that over the years, it's got harder and easier to get in contact with people. It's got harder because, many people are working from home. You can't just phone them and try and get a conversation, with those people. Lots of forms of outreach, such as email, and even through LinkedIn and social media, are, in some ways met with a bit of disdain by those potential customers. They don't want to be interrupted. They certainly don't want to be spammed. And we're all receiving those kind of spam emails. So it is more challenging at times. And however, the reason why I say it's never been easier is that actually, through things like LinkedIn, we do have access to potential customers, people who might have a need for the kind of things that we're selling. And of course, they are their own gatekeeper. What that means is that I don't have to go through 1, 2, or 3 layers of people to be able to have a conversation directly with the person who might be interested. And that comes, like any form of outreach, it comes with its fair share of rejection. And I'm sure, some people are upset by outreach through social media in the way that they might also be through email. My view of that is, if done right, then by all means say no to people who reach out to you. But one of the key purposes of LinkedIn was for networking and finding opportunities to work with other people. And so if you're on LinkedIn, a little bit of LinkedIn etiquette from all of us is really good. Like, don't spam people on LinkedIn, but equally, if someone is attempting to do some outreach, then, a no thank you is fine. Right? That's absolutely fine. And where I think, AI can help is it can help us do a little bit more of effective research into individuals and organizations. It can help us with some of our messaging. All of us have at times sort of scratched our head going, I wonder what message is going to be compelling enough for someone to want a conversation with me. And I do think, as long as it's not 100% AI, I do think that it gives you a starting point that you can then refine. And the other thing that we're seeing is the amplification of outreach with cadences of messages being automated, but with personalization, or at least an appearance of personalization within that. And, for all of us, there is often a balance between finding that opportunity, and then we've got to do the work to deploy or deliver that opportunity. And if you've got a little engine that's working alongside that, we can start to smooth those peaks and troughs of new business development around it. So, look, I think with the right level of personalization, which AI can help with, that amplification effect is really useful for people in the sales world.
So in essence, I think whenever you get to the sharp end of actually really reaching out and making that contact in terms of really opening up the opportunity. That's where the personal comes in. That's where, some of the more traditional approaches you think still are in favor. However, if you're wanting to kind of always fill the hopper, grow the number of opportunities in the first place, then there's a real place for AI.
Yeah. Yes. Look, relationship, I think, is still at the heart of successful business development. Particularly if you're selling a product where it's important for a salesperson to be talking to a potential customer, and it's not just self-service and you can buy it online. But that relationship has no chance of starting unless you get to the point where you can have a conversation. There has to be something in place that is going to frankly be a little bit of a numbers game until you get to that opportunity. And then, you've got a chance of really engaging, understanding them and where they're coming from, the challenges they face, to be able to position something that might help.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and also around the AI, the speed of development is unreal. I would have had quite a pride in being able to spot the chatbots back in the day. It was very easy to try and trick them or ask a question which would just stop them dead in their tracks. But actually, the technology's got so advanced now, it really is very challenging to work out if this is a real connection with a human being or an algorithm that's sitting behind it. But for those organizations, or maybe a CEO or someone who's leading a sales team who has kind of always been in the position where they're thinking, well, AI doesn't impact me. I can kind of ways, just put it on the back burner and deal with that at another time. What would your advice be?
My advice would be sooner or later, you're going to need to engage with AI for a number of reasons. One is, even in CRM systems, we're seeing AI being built into things like Salesforce. And there's a couple of things that I've seen that I think are really positive. One is to be able to understand the level of engagement a potential prospect or potential customer has with your sales team. The AI is actually lead scoring around that, so that you can focus your efforts on the more promising opportunities where you can get better levels of engagement. The second thing is, the messages that are being sent out through email, even the calls that salespeople are making, is now being, or there is the potential for that to be assessed using some AI tools that allow you to pick out keywords to understand, is the salesperson actually doing a good job in that conversation? So not only do you get some benefits around the quantity of activity that's being done, you're also getting some insight into the quality of that activity. And that's the secret sauce, if you like. If you got the right quantity and the right quality of activity, then your chances of being successful are increased. I wonder where it ends, because what we're seeing is that RFPs or tenders are now being created with the help of AI. You'd be naive to think that they're not being responded to with AI, because they are. So you've got AI created RFPs, tenders going out to organizations who are AI responding to those. And I do just wonder if there comes a degree of homogenization in the kind of the tenders going out, but also the responses coming back. I don't yet know if it makes it easier to choose between different suppliers if you're a buying organization, or whether it's going to get harder. And I'd need to see a better sample of responses to give advice on that. But I would say, AI is definitely transforming how we work. It's speeding up things. But if it gets to the point of a homogenous response, then you're probably missing some of that human intelligence that can really make the final difference.
So I know, Steve, we've known each other for a few years, and I think one of the things we've always shared a passion for, as well as obviously sport, trying to keep fit, trying to battle the wrinkles and the lines that come with age to a certain. But we always end up chatting about business, And I think as a business owner, for a couple of decades now, really, in your own world, I think it's interesting maybe just to check what sort of challenges or even opportunities you've had as a business owner, that you think are worth sort of sharing the learnings from. I think sometimes what impacts us directly, that we a real valuable lesson from that. So I'm just wondering if there's anything you'd like to maybe sort of pick up on that. But also I've noticed behind you, Delta Learning changed the game. So whenever we first met, the organisation that you had created really was Salestrong. So maybe tie in that rebrand into your answer as well would be useful. Why did you decide to make that change?
In terms of the challenges as a business owner, and I want to be very clear, a small business owner in my case. I think the first thing is, you believe when you start a business, you believe you've got a great idea and people are going to give you money for that great idea. And so it's, the first challenge you've got to do is get beyond the passion that you might have for the product or service that you're going to offer, and very quickly into a world of, but can I make any money? Because the harsh fact is that regardless of how passionate you are about the thing, if it doesn't drive the economic engine for you and your organization, then it's a hobby. And,
An expensive hobby.
And it can be an expensive hobby. So, that's the first bit, is figure out, can you monetize it? And then the second bit, and I am going all the way back 15 years ago when I set up the business, is it's really easy when you're starting out to get sucked into trying to do everything. You get very excited about creating websites and the marketing that sits behind it, and maybe less excited, but finding an accountant and all of those aspects to setting up a business that could potentially thrive. And one of the things that I've had to learn is to be a much more effective delegator. And it doesn't come naturally for me, but I've had to learn that over the years, to trust other people to be able to deliver other elements. Otherwise, you are the biggest bottleneck inside your own business, and that bottleneck is the thing that can stop you growing as effectively as you would like. But the key to effective delegation, I found, is you've got to hire really good people. And those really good people, there's a benefit if they can also have a passion for the kind of thing that you're selling, the product or the service that you're providing. And that's not always an easy thing. Sometimes you got to kiss a few frogs before you find a prince or a princess around that. And then the third one is, can you adapt to survive or thrive? It'd be no surprise to every single person who looks at this podcast that I reference COVID as a big challenge, certainly for my kind of business, which was delivering primarily training and coaching and consulting for organizations, which relied on us being in the same space around it, that had a big negative impact. And if we hadn't adapted, there would be no business today. And I think that adaptability that organizations need to demonstrate is a real strength, and it's that thing that is going to help companies thrive in the future. So I'm going to go for those three. There's tons more, but those three are kind of key. So figure out what it is that you're passionate about and that you can monetize. Find great people who you can delegate to, and then when you are faced with challenges, maybe unexpected challenges, that you've got that adaptability to be able to pivot and continue being successful where you can. Go on.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to pick up on I guess those that work in the HR world would call it, that sort of talent acquisition and finding the right people for your business. And as someone who is also a member of LinkedIn and other platforms, quite often that's seen as one of the most significant challenges for employers at this stage. So could you maybe chat around what successful techniques you've tried in terms of not only finding the right people, but I guess we could stretch that into retaining the right people in a marketplace where you've got the options of being a digital nomad, literally working anywhere in the world. So how do you not only find the right people, but also then hold on to the right people?
Yeah, I think if I think about how how I did it with my organization, then quite often it was through referral, recommendation. It was that personal relationship, even if that was one step removed. You could argue, it's not what you know, but who you know, and that is still a great part of it. Because I think there's an element of increased trust that comes with that. Now, I'm not going to recommend every organization just go through their network of people that they know uh, to fulfill all of their talent acquisition needs. But it definitely helps, particularly for a small business. For the last 6 months, I've been fortunate to be working side an organization called SHL, which is one of the leaders in the talent acquisition and talent management space, based on their nearly 45 years of experience in psychometric assessments. And I have to say, my eyes have been opened to the power of psychometric assessment in a way that I just didn't realize how effective it is to use a skill-based assessment to make sure that you're actually finding people who have the right fit for the kind of roles that you have. And as part of working with them, I'm now reseller of their assessment. So I have to declare a bias to this. But the results that they've been able to achieve in thousands of organizations with millions of people and millions of data points they have now that show a very clear correlation between psychometric assessment and people's then ability to be higher performing in role, and also the increased retention rates that you tend to get when people are a better fit for the role, I think is a real, I'm going to say game changer, but it's just a game changer for me because it's been around for a long time. But any organization that isn't using psychometric assessments should really consider having a look at those. And one of the challenges in that talent acquisition space now is that, of course, with AI, people can upgrade their CVs to make it look like they're fit for every role that they apply for. But that's not the truth. That's just not possible. So I do think organizations are looking at sifting through a lot more CVs in that regard. And again, it's that homogenization of response is going to make it difficult to, sift. So I think there are benefits to both parties in that AI, but equally you need something better to be able to sift through and find people who might be a better fit. There's still a place for interviewing. However, we know that interviews are notoriously subjective unless the interviewer has had some really good training about trying to reduce that subjective bias that we all have when doing that. So I think anything you can do to equip hiring managers to reduce that subjective bias is also going to help you find the right sort of talent. So yeah, I've taken the Kool-Aid, if you like, around psychometric assessments and better structured interviews to find people who are a better fit. In terms of retention, I think the first thing is if you find people who are a better fit, they're more likely to enjoy the role that they're in. And therefore, they're more likely to be higher performers and they're more likely to stay longer because that's just human nature. If I enjoy it and I'm good at it, then I'm more likely to want to do more of it for longer. And I also think, organizations have been and will continue to offer more flexibility to people in the workplace with hybrid working from home. And although there's a lot in the press about the example of Stuart Rose, the ex-M&S boss, amongst other things, suggesting that working from home isn't real work. If you don't offer a degree of flexibility, I think in the main, you might find that people self-select outside of your organization because, the genie's out of the bottle in terms of that one. And it's a long answer, Peter. Maybe my final thing about retention is that actually, despite flexibility and working from home, there is still a place for the social aspect of work. I still think people, at least intermittently, want to engage with colleagues, particularly when you're earlier in your career. It's the way we all learned. It's the way we built relationships that allow all of us to be effective. So I think an investment to encourage that by leaders and organizations, but also by individuals and organizations to do that, and not just get into the habit of I never go into the office. Make that investment in your own career. People want growth opportunities in organizations. They want to feel like they're developing and that they're being invested in. So, there is still a significant place for a visible investment of time and money into people in organizations. Don't just hand it all over to ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot and go, if you want to learn anything, just put in the thing you want to learn and ChatGPT will give you an answer. Actually, there is still a joy in learning in more traditional ways. The dynamic is still advantageous, as you'll know from your learning and development career. I don't know if you want to extend on that.
Yeah, I think there are a number of issues that you've raised. I think ultimately the working from home scenario, that's something I've been able to do now for nearly a decade. Before COVID, it was kind of the way that I worked. And I think a lot of it's down to trust. Having an employer, an organization that trusts their team to deliver no matter where they are seated, whether it's under the nose of the CEO in the sort of the glass office in central London, or whether it's in their kitchen, around the kitchen table. I think trust is a huge part of it. And some of the discussions that I've had previously with SMEs around this sort of, I guess, challenge is that some of the people who may have not given you 100%, shall we say, in the traditional workspace of being in the office, most likely may replicate that no matter where they're working from. And those that we're delivering will deliver for you because it's an attitude, isn't it? It's a behavior that's very apparent. And I think secondly, around the recruitment, investment is what springs to mind. So quite often we see recruitment as, well, it's an expense, but we'd rather minimize that expense. And quite often whenever we see it being minimized, you get a couple of, shall we say, maybe the wrong fit, or two people come into your business, and that can be very damaging, not only to the culture, but also then the expense of having to manage the process where they are then going to exit your business. So it's really, it's a false economy by trying to cut back on it. So it's investing of the time, investing potentially in pounds and pence to get it right is always worth that extra bit of effort at the start.
I mean, maybe I can pick up on that. A piece of work that I've been doing with that organization, talent acquisition, talent recruitment, is looking at the return on investment of investing in their psychometric assessments and other tools that they have. And if you look at talent acquisition, quality of hire, you've got an increased likelihood of getting a higher performer when you use their assessments than when you don't use their assessments. So of course, there's a cost to the assessment, but that improved quality of hire can have a direct impact on the additional profitability that the organization makes per head. And very quickly, it adds up to a lot of money. There's a real life example where an organization looking for 4,000 hires in a year, which is a big organization, by using those assessments, there's a £15 million potential return. And it's not crazy numbers. It's not like, oh, and we said everyone's going to generate another £1 million each. They're quite small, incremental, per head numbers, but they add up to a lot across 4,000 hires. Time to hire is reduced, because it's a much more effective hiring process. And that retention piece. And of course, if you retain people for longer, you reduce your ongoing recruitment costs over time. You reduce any onboarding costs for new people, and of course, their productivity remains, higher than if you have to continually recruit new people because you're losing your existing people. So there's a whole bunch of really good, numbers that sit behind the value of doing these things more effectively.
I'm going to allow you that. That's the second plug you've given. So yeah.
It's okay. We might edit that out.
Well, yeah, it would be surprising not to be sold at by Steve Bussey, even during the podcast. So
Well,
yeah,
and Peter, and if I may, actually, let me have a third plug, not for that business, but for myself. The truth, and you know this, when I work for organisations, it's like I'm working in the organisation. I become passionate about what they do, and I'm very keen, to promote what they do. So I don't know if everyone feels that way, but certainly it's the way that I feel.
well, I think it's fair to say that psychometrics has a new disciple, Steve Bussey. So, Steve, one thing that I don't know if you've really quite picked up on that answer you've given us was around the name change and the rebrand. So, Delta Learning, I think when I think of Delta, kind of the vast sort of network of water and rivers coming sort of into the sea. And I think about the Mississippi Delta with some of the best blues music. So I'd be really interested in hearing where Delta Learning came from. Sort of what was the genesis of that particular branding?
Yeah, I mean, Salestrong, my previous company, had been around for 10 years, and we were successful in the space that we inhabited. But of course, the great strength and weakness of Salestrong is in the name. It's quite clear what we do. We're about making sales stronger for the organizations we work with. And it took us a long time to come up with that name, even though it shouldn't have. However, the weakness of it is that it does restrict us to remaining in the sales space. And through that COVID period, it became apparent to me that actually, if we were to adapt and survive and go on and thrive again, then we needed to broaden our proposition. And hence the change to Delta Learning. And the idea behind Delta, so it is, if you look at one definition of Delta, it is, that river that suddenly has a choice and splits into different tributaries, if that's the right word. But the other is the mathematical meaning that sits behind it, which is it's about change. It's a point of change. And I've really got to give credit to another Peter, a guy called Peter Nolan, who's a great coach and sometime mentor of mine, who talks about Delta all the time. And he talks about changing the game and how, our game one is our existing game and looking for continuous improvement. And you can improve game one. But game two is about looking at it from an entirely different perspective. And really thinking creatively about moving beyond continuous improvement into making a change that's going to make a significant step change and make a difference in that way. And I really loved that idea and wanted to incorporate that into the way that we approached the business and how we engage with our customers and our clients. We really want to challenge their thinking and go beyond incremental improvement and see if we can find a way to really change their game. And that goes beyond just the traditional sales training and coaching that we might do into looking at their systems, their process, that mindset piece again, and really working with a team in a much more holistic way to see where the potential is for changing their game.
Very good. Yeah, and I love the fact that you've mentioned coaching on a number of occasions during during our chat, is a passionate coach, and someone who works regularly with coaches. It's something that I guess can it be ignored if you're a business owner? Can you ignore that support that comes from potentially an external source, someone who can view your business maybe from afar, from a different viewpoint? And it's great to hear you as a strong advocate for coaching. And I guess we can both think back to some of the inner game of tennis, was it? And changing the game, and some of that early work that was done on coaching, and the link from sport into business again is really, really strong.
Yeah, look, I'm biased, maybe like you're biased, Peter. My background is in coaching. I did a master's in coaching. In all of my experience working with individuals and teams in organizations, I've yet to see anything as effective coaching in terms of improving performance. And it's a drum that I keep banging with leaders inside organizations, which is to encourage a more effective coaching culture in their organization, because the benefits are significant. And look, if you want to improve a team, you have to start with the individuals in the team. And if you can get every individual to improve just by 4 or 5%, then the compound effect across the team, of course, is significant. And sometimes we, for whatever reason, just don't find the time, or are not choosing to find the time to invest in individuals in that way. So yes, coaching is where it's at. The foundation of everything we do is built in a coaching approach.
Brilliant. That seems like a really good time to probably just draw this to a close. On that part of coaching, it certainly resonates with me, and I'm pretty happy to leave it at that. I'm not sure if you have anything you want to just sort of add in, Steve, before we sort of close down the session.
What would I like to add in based on the topics that we've discussed? But I mean, look, maybe a little bit of a summary. We looked at some of those common themes that organizations face, and one of the keys is the mindset first, and the tool set and the skill set follow. So if you can get that mindset in the right place, then great things can happen around that. Some of the challenges and things that help organization, that adaptability, because situation, circumstance always has the ability to surprise you. And if you can adapt, then that's going to help. We spoke a lot about finding the right people and keeping the right people. And I do think that is fundamental. And, I know organizations invest a lot in this space, but for some organizations, they could probably go even further to do it. And because for most organizations, people genuinely are the thing that makes the difference around it. And if I could leave one final request for people out there is, regardless of how this month has gone or 2024 went for you, you've still got the future to go and influence positively and, drive that success. And if you haven't got a coach, find one.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Steve. Good to catch up, and I'm sure we'll speak shortly. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Look, it's been a real pleasure having the tables turned this time for this podcast. So thank you very much again.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of our Sales Podcast Series 3. We hope the insights resonated with you and provoked some thought. If you found value in today's episode, please make sure to subscribe so you never miss out on expert tips and strategies from our guests across different industries. And remember, Delta Learning is here to help you transform your team's performance in 2025. When you're looking to either build capability or deliver better business results, then please approach us as a potential partner. Visit deltalearning.co.uk to learn more about how we can support your team's growth, or email me, steve@deltalearning.co.uk, with any questions or just to have a chat to see how we might work together. Thank you.